Hello everyone and welcome to Science Unscripted. It's Conor here.
And Gabe.
And we are joined by a Dutch vending machine today.
And inside of this Dutch vending machine is a special Dutch treat called a stroopwafel. I want to get it out of there. It's a really delicious treat, but I don't know how to get it out.
We could probably figure out this machine. It's got a function for English right there, but if we couldn't, there are also all these Dutch university students wandering around right now. We could ask them for help. They could come over and do it for us, or we could learn from them.
We could learn from them. Human beings are able to learn and figure out how to solve complex problems like this one here. Are chimpanzees?
Science Unscripted.
Hi, my name is Ed. I'm an assistant professor at Utrecht University, and I study chimpanzees to try and understand the cultural differences and similarities with the human species.
Ed, you recently published a study on chimpanzees. What was the conclusion of that study?
We found that chimpanzees could copy a certain complex behavior from each other that they could not innovate themselves.
It involved a box.
Yes.
Describe this box and what was inside it and how you could get that thing.
Yeah, the box, we made it ourselves, very, very sturdy because the chimps break everything, so it needed to be really, really chimp-proof. The box had a drawer that needed to be pulled out, and in the drawer was a cavity. And in the cavity needed to be inserted some sort of a coin, so we introduced the currency in chimpanzees.
This is a vending machine.
It is a vending machine.
This is a vending machine for chimpanzees.
It is, yeah.
Okay.
And underneath all of this was a peanut, or what were they trying to do?
Yeah, huge amount of peanuts.
Bunch of peanuts?
Bunch of peanuts.
Okay, so they couldn't destroy it?
Oh, they tried, and they actually succeeded once.
Oh no! God. But you had glass. They could look in. They knew, just like with the vending machine. Oh my gosh!
Yeah.
Look at all these candy bars. They knew something good was in there, and they had to figure out how to break the code.
Sure, yeah, almost. I mean, we tried to prevent the visibility because otherwise they would go berserk and they would really try to destroy it. But they always find a way to see through it anyway. And we hid some cameras in the puzzle box for us to see what the chimpanzees were doing. And through that glass, a tiny piece of glass that the cameras were filming through, they could peek through inside the box and saw that there were peanuts inside.
Mm-hmm. And on their own, they couldn't get it?
On their own, they
what
tried.
did you do? You taught one of the smartest one how to do it?
Yeah, first we built it in the woods, so in their enclosure where they live the whole day. And so many chimpanzees were really going at it, and they were manipulating the drawer. They had these wooden balls. This is what they needed to put in as a vending machine.
The ball was the coin.
The ball was the coin. Yeah, that was the currency. So we provided lots of them, even peanuts around it. And then once they were gone, they were focused on the box entirely. And for 3 months, they tried as much as possible, and nobody succeeded in understanding how this 1 + 1 should be combined to make 2.
So 3 months go by, and they're like, this damn machine, I can't figure it out. And then you take...
Then you trained one how to do it? You taught that one the secret?
Indeed, yeah, indeed. There's in Chimfunchi, where I work, in Zambia, it's a beautiful location where chimpanzees can be rehabilitated. And they live their natural lives. They come inside once a day for extra food. And when they were inside, we released the entire group except for one of the smartest females that we kept inside. And when she was calm, we showed the trick to her.
You've got the smartest female chimpanzee of all of them. And then what do you do?
So we kept her inside, and we basically showed the trick to her. We did it in front of her. We pulled out the drawer, put in the wooden ball, closed the drawer, and automatically the peanut would come out. So the vending machine principle.
Wait, that was the height of the complexity? Drawer open, ball in, close?
Yes.
That's it?
Yeah, that's
and
it.
For chimps, that's pretty complex.
They couldn't solve, yeah.
It is, I think, partly due to the fact that it's not all in one location and with the same apparatus. They needed to fetch these balls from the woods. So we would toss the balls in the woods.
Gotcha.
Later on. Initially, we provided them to them, so they could just use them. But just to put it together, like a wooden ball with a drawer, like how would you come up with it?
Okay, yeah.
Got it.
I mean, for us, it's intuitive. We made it,
obvious,
and
it's
obvious,
completely obvious to us.
Yeah.
So then the smartest one knows how to do it.
Yes.
And then what happened? You watched how that smartest one showed everyone else how to do it, or the other ones just copied her?
Exactly. Yeah. Indeed. This individual.
How long did that take?
It took 2 months. And then a good bit of the group started copying. So in one group we had 5 chimps, young ones, but also a few older ones. And in the other group, there were 10 chimpanzees that copied this behavior from the one that we trained. So we had 2 smart females, one in each group that we trained. And they started doing it for 2 months, and already, you know, the first time that they did it, they started to attract attention because there were peanuts coming out. So how does this work? I also want to do this.
This is the peanut lady. She's got
my God.
she's
Yes.
got the code. But I guess my question is just like why all of the chimpanzees wouldn't do that. This is someone who has figured out how to get free peanuts forever.
Yes.
And I, as a chimpanzee, I just sit there and I'm like, nope, I'm not going to be a part of that. Why?
I think because chimpanzees are quite a dominant species, or like a dominance governed species. So in the group there's a strict hierarchy, and a lot is about like who is getting food, and the most dominant ones are getting the food usually. We only had 1 vending machine per group. So if you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 individuals doing this the whole time, it's crowded. And if you are the 6th or the 7th chimpanzee to try and join them, it becomes risky.
Even though they could have learned, they weren't allowed to learn.
Yes.
But the point of the experiment was to show that these chimps can learn from others within the group to do a complex task. That was it.
That they cannot innovate themselves. That was crucial.
Themselves.
Yeah, we really needed to show that they cannot innovate this themselves.
And we didn't know that before? This is like a first ever for science?
We knew that chimpanzees could socially learn. This is not new. But usually these are very simple things. Although like in the wild, we talk about like nut cracking. So how do you open nuts and get very nutritious food out of it? It's a complex task. And that's people also think that social learning is involved, that copying is involved. But usually when we do it experimentally, it's a very simple task, like sliding a door to the left or to the right or up or down, or doing the handle this way, that way. Everybody can do that. All chimps can do that by themselves. So we wanted to have a complex task that the chimps cannot do by themselves, and then see if they're smart enough, if I can say that, to learn it from a group member.
Is that so different from a task that would be relatively easy?
Yes, because if a task is relatively easy, you will never get any further in your development. So there's no accumulation. Everybody invents the same things because everybody can do it. If there is an innovator, a very smart individual, innovating something very complex that is building on something simple, and nobody can copy it, then it dies out again with that individual. You don't get like a progression of accumulation of socially learned behaviors. Whereas in humans, we think this is the key to our complex cultures, our cumulative cultures. So if you cannot copy that step, then it dies out.
For us, it's almost automatic, right? That we
copy.
learn. And for chimps, it's not clearly not automatic. This is the first time that we've ever watched them do it?
Well, I think there are behaviors in the wild that also imply that they do this complex social learning. But for us, where it's very automatic to even imitate each other when we are talking to each other, even unconsciously, chimpanzees are much more focused on their own world initially. So when there's something that they want to do in their environment, they do it themselves first.
And chimps they're our closest relatives, right? Why are they so different when it comes to this? Or why is it so hard for them to learn these complex social tasks? And for us, it's so easy. How can they be so different if they're so close to us?
Yeah, that's a very good question. There's like many theories about it, and we don't know for sure. But one of the theories is that we have come to live in very complex, big groups, for which there's lots of social information arriving because you have many individuals in big groups. And it became more important to copy this behavior from each other because otherwise we would not survive. And this need might not have happened for the chimpanzee so much. Maybe their environment, their ecology is not so much eliciting the need to socially learn complex behaviors.
I've heard the argument that chimps have it too good, too easy, that their lives, well, they're
what do they do all day?
They are the kings and the queens of the canopy, of the forest canopy. There's abundant food, fruits. I don't even know what a diet is, but it's all around. You can just hang out. You have to make sure that you're not attacked by another group, and that your hierarchy is. But otherwise, life is so good that maybe they haven't, therefore, evolved these highly complex.
Are you telling the chimp expert about chimps?
I'm saying I've heard this.
That they've not evolved?
I've heard
No,
this.
I see.
And I want you to debunk it if it's crap. Is it?
Well, I wonder at the same time as you ask this question, like the same thing happened to us too. Like we also had it very good. We had a common ancestor like 5 to 6 million years ago. Why did we go onto this path,
Why?
you know, and the chimpanzees not?
That's a great question.
That is a question
Why?
I think a lot of people don't have the answer to. Why?
Yeah, well, first of all, the chimpanzees, I think they are really working hard for their survival. They don't have it too good.
Okay.
They're looking for food the entire day. There's like fierce competition between groups that we've also, you know, evolved in. And actually, this intergroup competition that groups fight each other and kill each other is one of the driving forces behind theories saying that in order for a group to survive, you have to learn complex skills from each other and be able to outcompete other groups. Even like in warfare, like using spears or using tools to engage in intergroup conflict. Or at least be socially attuned, so you're very, you know what others are doing and you back each other up if there is a fight. So this starts to evolve more into like a social motivation, like a social connection. And that is maybe the ground bed for more social learning, for instance.
And yet still they haven't. Compared to Homo sapiens sapiens.
Yeah, true. So I'm trying to see in chimpanzees what they really have, and if maybe they have the capacity to learn these socially, like these complex tasks. So they might have this capacity. This is one thing that we try to understand with our empirical work. And then if they have this capacity, which it looks a little bit like it with our study, then why, is there not more? Why is there not more cultural diversification as we have, or accumulation? So then maybe we have to look in other arenas, like the ecology, for instance. Like maybe for them it's not needed, and for humans it was, because we evolved from the canopies and the tree tops to out in the open savannas.
Why did we go down? If I've got the choice, you've got this relatively safe, you can hide behind the leaves, or this canopy, or the exposed savanna. Why did we branch off and go for the savanna?
Obviously, I don't know the exact answer, but I don't think it is a very, very deliberate choice to make. And it's also not the case, I think, that we've had it very good and yet chose to do something else. If we see anything happening in humans and in our closest living relatives, the chimpanzees, is that we're quite conservative. Our lifestyle is dear to us because it works. So if it works, we are not forced into the savannas. I think there was competition and there was a need to expand. Otherwise, we wouldn't have gone. So I think it was not by choice, it was by necessity. And if we are driven into the savannas, other things maybe become more important, and other maybe hunting techniques also become more important, because you have to hunt for other mammals, for instance.
You said 6 million years ago was when we branched off from chimpanzees?
Roughly, yeah.
The question of why that happened probably cannot be answered, but the chimpanzees that exist today, they didn't continue evolving. Why not?
Well, first of all, we didn't split. We did not split from chimpanzees. Like 6 million years ago, we were just one species. This was our common ancestor, and then there was speciation that led, to the hominin path, to our path, with lots of Homo species, not just Homo sapiens, but Homo species, and lots of ape species.
And our brains just kept developing and getting more and more complex, and our capacity for imitation grew and grew and grew, where we were able to learn way more things, and the social learning arts got better. But theirs didn't.
Yes.
Why not?
Of course, they have still evolved. They have still kept on evolving, but not into the species that we now know is us. Yeah. So they have also evolved, of course, for the last 6 million years. But they have kept probably into the same environment more than we did. So we were forced out of our environment, and we started using tools for some reason or another, and this could be linked. We needed to use tools to survive in a new environment, and tool use comes with lots of complex skills, and also more like need to collaborate, collaborative hunting, for instance, and learning maybe how you even make a tool, to cut open an animal or to kill an animal. How do you do that? If it's a one-time thing, then it dies out again.
What do I have inside of my brain that allows me to watch you or to watch Gabe do something, and let's say it's a 5-step process, and I'm not even thinking about it. I watch it, and then I do all 5 steps afterwards, and a chimpanzee cannot necessarily do that as well. What's up here? What is it? What's going on that allows that?
I think it's a very socially motivated brain. So the way that you look at me now and I look at you, we have a common space that we live in now, that we share. And we try to understand each other here. And the chimps do not really have that. At least that's the idea. I mean, they all live for their own survival. And of course they are social animals, so they collaborate, but they are not so much into this shared social space as we are. And with that comes a lot of information transmission. You know, I learn from you, you learn from me, maybe. And we can do together things that you cannot do by yourself. So this is extending what I can do by myself, because I can do it with you and with many more people. You know, we collaborate around the globe, and chimps, they don't.
But I
Not
guess
only collaboration, also conflict, right? Because the social brain, when you're imitating something or like somebody that you want to be like, you also want to have what they have.
Yeah.
And you guys, there's some objects that you can't share. And then you have rivalries with other people. Does the same thing happen with chimps? What do conflicts among chimpanzees look like? That same kind of model? Or?
Fierce. Just like in humans, I guess it can happen. But with group living, like chimpanzees and like humans, comes conflict. I mean, group living is safety in numbers. So the more that you are together, you know, the less likely you are falling a prey to other groups or to predators, for instance. This is a common thing in biology. That's why we live in groups. But at the same time, you also need to take care of yourself. And if you are in a group, there's lots of resources available, but you have to share it somehow. Or you have to fight over it. So that's where the conflict comes. And that's why chimpanzees have this strict dominant hierarchy to govern this a little bit. It's like formalized. They know what they can do, who can go to the food, who can go to the females to mate with, who needs to lead the attack to other groups. So there's this comes with a better idea of how to live your life, I guess.
I read a book that basically made the argument that we humans can throw things really well. That there's no animal in the world that can pick up a rock and throw it the way that Gabe could, that I could, that you could, and that was vital to our survival after we dropped down from the trees, that if a predator was coming and we were in a group. Again, I just find the theory super interesting. I don't know if you've...
I have something to say about that.
Yeah? Wait, please.
Well, the theory about throwing and very, very targeted throwing is put out there to kind of have a reason, an argument for why we evolved the way we did. So we needed it for hunting. And the hunting opened up, you know, a new resource that sustained our survival. I've just come from Zambia, and I could have sitting here with a blue eye because chimpanzees in Zambia, and I think around the world, are very, very good throwers. And they pick up a rock the same as humans do, and they throw it overhand, and they target it on the spot if you are careless. Yes.
Wait, how close are you to these chimpanzees?
It could be anything ranging between 2 meters and 50 meters.
Have they ever thrown a rock at you?
Yes.
What do you do?
Initially. Well, actually to my wife. So when I visited with my wife and I showed her around the chimpanzees for the first time, I saw that Sinky was actually getting a stone and kind of hid it from me, and then he came charging and then he threw it. And it hit her, but almost in her eye, but it hit her, I think, at the shoulder.
Well, what did you do to Zinky then? Did you say
no? I mean,
no
yeah,
Zinky?
it's
shake the finger at him?
How do you admonish a chimpanzee?
Yeah.
You don't.
No?
No, at all times.
You don't want to piss them off? Or?
You don't want to piss them off, no. And they are very interesting creatures because you develop a trusting relationship with them. And especially for the caretakers, you know, if you don't do that and they escape, they might hurt you. But on the positive side, I mean, if you open up to chimpanzees, they open up to you. It's like with many animals, I think, but then you feel this natural connection. And it's important to them. If you look into their eyes, you see a very, very intelligent and socially intelligent being.
Were you around them when some of them were finally successful to solving this
vending machine?
I wasn't. No, my student was in the field, so she texted this very exciting message, and that was really cool to find out. And initially, I was worried maybe, you know, this task for 3 months' time they would solve it themselves, and that would debunk our study. You know, then it's something simple that they can all innovate. They don't have to socially learn. So for 3 months and even longer, actually, I was worried that I would get a text saying that Sinky solved it, you know, or Zabu solved it, because then it would be in vain.
So the chimpanzees have solved, or I don't know, 33% of them, roughly 25% of them have figured out the peanut vending machine. What would the next puzzle really look like for the chimpanzees in this reserve in Zambia?
Yeah, the next puzzle I think would involve more like a higher step sequence. So now we have a sequence of only 2 or 3 steps, but we want to try and make it more complex by having a longer sequence and maybe also different materials to combine and even them working together to do it. So we are trying to see what is key to human culture. You know, what is key to human social learning, and I want to put that, you know, to the test with the chimpanzees.
Why is this experiment, or why is what you found important for our understanding of the world?
And ourselves, I guess.
Yeah.
So what we found...
What is it exactly?
I think it is important for trying to understand the evolutionary roots of culture and also to connect ourselves and our culture more to the natural world. Like culture is usually seen as something really, you know, from humans, you know, who else has culture? But I think if we look at other animal species and we even look at the more complex forms of culture, like fashion trends or something, or copy and complex.
Opera?
Sorry?
Or opera?
Yeah, that for instance. Then or like dancing, rain dance for instance, that is something that they do. And then we kind of understand a little bit more about where our proclivities, like social mind, comes from. How much we share that with other species, and maybe it also bolsters some like empathy for other species.
We are extremely genetically similar to chimpanzees.
Mm-hmm.
How difficult would it be in the realm of science fiction to flip a gene or 2 or 3, or how many would that be, to allow a chimpanzee to follow a 5-step process as easily as we would?
It's a very interesting question, because I'm not even sure if this is something that works from genetics. I think chimpanzees are very genetically similar to humans. I think they have everything they need. That's my hypothesis. And they can actually learn how to imitate from each other. They can learn how to imitate complex steps from each other.
Wait a minute, so their brains are just as big?
They're not as big.
Something went wrong along the way for them? Or?
No, they're not as big as a human brain, but I think what it is that is needed for culture to thrive is existent in chimpanzees for a large part. I actually want to explore how much, you know, where is really the cutoff. And I don't think it's in the copying of complex things, but it's more like in the having the social space together and doing something for each other that is different between chimpanzees and humans.
There are videos all over the internet of, usually it's magpies, of birds fashioning complex not complex, they're taking a piece of wire and bending it into a hook so that they can get something out of a long tube, and then they get that tool out of there, and then they do the next step. It's a multi-step process that is reminiscent of us humans, and so it leaves me wondering,
But they didn't learn that socially.
No.
They learned that on their own.
Well, some people
Those magpies.
That's true.
Yeah.
That's,
some people are also testing this. Like if some of these individuals, they make it themselves, obviously, they innovate, but they also want to see if others, they can copy that from these innovators, because that opens up a lot of space for you to explore and to benefit from. You know, you gain much more food if you can do it. You can get that thing out of the tree, whatever they eat. And so they look at animal species, and I look at chimpanzees, but all species are equally like interesting for that matter, because this is consistent with what I just said. It's not about the brain per se. They have the socially, you know, wiring somewhat, but we want to see like to what extent they have it, and if that's different from humans. If birds also have the same kind of capacity, that means that it's not an evolutionary preserved trait. It's a convergent evolution thing. It's like forced by their environment, maybe by social group living is enough, you know, for species to try and see if they can evolve, like social learning, even of complex tasks. Doesn't need to be like an evolutionary thing.
And in that case, it would just imply that they're a few million years behind us. That in the last 5-6 million years, social pressures, environmental pressures, survival pressures were enough that it forced that to happen quickly with us humans, but that the other animals, given enough time, would possibly converge on the same effect.
Hypothetically, yeah, I guess like if you were to put the chimpanzees, for instance, in the same kind of evolutionary scenario as humans were in, it's not like unlikely that they could also evolve over like 5-6 million years into a species like the humans, because we have the same common ancestor. They were just not, forced in that direction, and that's why they are living the way that they live now, and we have the capacities that we have now. We've expanded the globe, and we could only do that by also having different capacities evolved in us.
Did I understand you right that human culture comes from our ability to do this easily, these tasks?
I think so. I think human culture, partly, I think that human culture comes from this idea that we can very meticulously copy each other and therefore transfer complex things to new generations, and they can build on it. So we have technological innovations, and that spreads across the globe. So we have it all, it doesn't die out. And I think also human culture partly is about social bonding. So culture also has this function of being an identifier of social groups. And what we talked about, when you have group conflicts, it's really good to know who is, from your group that you give your life for almost, and not from the other group. So it's about being together.
At what age, I'm talking as a baby, have we surpassed the ability of a chimpanzee to complete a multi-sequence process just by watching someone else?
I think at the age of 3 to 4, and not before. So we have a similar ontogeny, growing up and developing as chimpanzees for the first few years. And we know that from some ethically questionable studies in the past, but this is interesting to know. And then seemingly it takes off, so the difference takes off, that especially human babies and human children, they are so much more focused on their social surroundings than chimpanzee infants. They explore the world, but not so much the social world. Human children explore the social worlds and not so much the other world. So it's almost like vice versa. Of course, they also play around in the environment, but they're so focused on their caregivers and their peers that they live in the social bubble, where social things are much more important, like social learning and being like the others or standing out. And for chimps, that's different. I think that's a huge difference. Their first mode of interacting with the environment is individually.
For people watching or listening to this right now, can you tell us what it's like to live amongst chimpanzees, what it's like to be with them on a day-to-day basis?
Yes, living with chimpanzees is very thrilling, because even after watching them for 16, 17 years, each moment can be very unpredictable. I never really know what's going to happen. And they can be super calm, relaxed, play around, goofing around, and from one second to the other, they can become entirely fierce and aggressive, and you don't know what's happening, and they change entirely. They puff up, they become super strong. They're all over the place, and you don't know what's happening. So living with them is like a roller coaster, I think, a very intense roller coaster. Yeah.
What have you been able to learn from them? Apart from the results in all these studies, just on a human level? Or interspecies level?
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like bonding with chimpanzees is something that kind of is some sort of a mirror to me, or to us. We're so used to living amongst our own species that is kind of a speciesism thing. But if you connect with another species, a being of another species, for me this was really almost, experiential dimension, very new. I felt much more human when seeing myself through the eyes of chimpanzees than seeing myself through the eyes of another human being, to some extent. Does that make sense?
No, why? Please explain it.
But this is the comparative psychology that I'm working in. If you compare species, then you see truly what the species is all about. If we're living in a bubble, we're so used to the way that we live that we hardly see that it can also be different. It can be very different. What we even make for the chimpanzees, like a vending machine, it could be totally nonsense, chimpanzees. And many experiments, I think, are total nonsense. And then we try to learn from that. But in our perception, it works. But for chimps, it's bullshit.
Do you ever look around? You're walking through the Netherlands here. some of the world's best infrastructure, people behaving very appropriately. A very civilized country. And do you ever look around based on your experience in Zambia with these chimpanzees and think, we're still really a lot like those animals?
Every day, yeah, every day. I mean, for me, that's my mode of living, the way that we interact. I mean, we have language, and language is kind of distorting reality, I think. But just our very being, and being together with others, is so much like chimpanzees do the whole time. When I first came back from Zambia, I also uttered these chimpanzee sounds to my wife. And I just, out of reflex, you know, I just kind of adopted the way that they talk to each other.
And how did she respond to that?
Maybe go back? No, I don't know. It took me a good few weeks to get rid of that, but it's just how we laugh, or how we say that we are happy with something or sad. Sometimes it just comes out, you know, as an utterance.
What are the sounds? Come on.
Yeah, you have lots of different vocalizations. Not so much as humans, but I think for us, the words get in the way. And if you are with chimpanzees, it's all about being and all about body language.
Is that what you meant before by saying experiential? That instead of letting words get in the way of what we actually feel, the chimps could just make these sounds and be more real?
I think so, yeah, more real. It feels more real, yes. It feels devoid of the whole facade of words, of language, and just, you know, our pure selves. That's how I felt when I was living with the chimpanzees.
Would it make sense to conduct your experiments with bonobos, which are similar to chimpanzees, but not the same as chimpanzees, other primates, monkeys?
Yeah, a similar experiment as our experiment was done actually with a totally different species, with bumblebees.
Bumblebees?
With bumblebees. And at the same time as we were working on the chimpanzee experiment, so they didn't have a vending machine, but they had something that is complex for one bumblebee to solve by itself. And they taught one bumblebee how to do it, and that bumblebee taught other bumblebees how to do it. And so it's the same kind of reasoning that we worked on in parallel. We didn't know of each other, but we kind of published it together, and that's why we also were like merged in a bigger story about this is not just, you know, one species that can do it. There's maybe people have not really been looked into this properly. Maybe all these tests before have been very simple, and once we actually do something complex and we put them to the test, maybe species can actually do this other than humans. So bumblebees. Yeah.
Does all this mean that we're not as unique as we thought with our big brains?
Well, I am. I don't know about you, but
I think we're just as unique as any other species. And I never know like how unique people think that they are. Like how unique do you think that you are?
Don't even start.
I don't think, I'm probably a bit unique, but many of us are unique, and the chimps too. I mean, they have names and personalities for a reason. And that's for, I think, all species.
Of the 150 chimpanzees that you have access to in these enclosures in Zambia, which one is your favorite, and why is it your favorite?
That's a good question. I think I bump into many people that work with our chimpanzees, and they all have to have a favorite chimpanzee. I honestly don't really have one. And if I have to pick, I would pick an old female, Noel, who always cares for the young ones and adopts others. But then again, you also have big males that adopt.
When did you meet Noel?
In 2007.
2007. Okay.
Yeah. And in 2010, we saw that she lost her adopted son, and she was so gentle and caring for him. So she cleaned his teeth when he died, and when the whole group was lured away with truckloads of food, she remained at the body with her daughter because they were really close, and they just cared for the body for a long time. And so she always is the mater familias, or so. Every chimp that is in trouble, or that even has a dead infant, what also sometimes happens, they go to Noel for advice almost. She then grooms and cares for the group.
And how long did Noel stay by this corpse?
Until she was forced away by the chimpanzee keepers because they wanted to remove the body because they were too sad themselves.
And they had to pull her away?
They had to they had tried many things. So first of all, food, and then shooing her away, or screaming at her out of desperation. And only when the group was kind of charging her at some point, she removed from the corpse, and then the caretakers were able to get the corpse out of the enclosure. But she would not let go by herself. So she is always caring for the group, which makes her my favorite chimp.
Are chimpanzees doing all right as a species?
No. No, chimpanzees are critically endangered. So they're still a very active bushmeat trade, and they are kept as pets, and that really pisses me off. So it's not getting any better. So in that sense, I'm an optimistic person, but for the survival of our closest living relatives, I'm pretty pessimistic, because somehow we still condone these things to happen. And for chimpanzees too.
And what, for the people out there listening right now or watching,
What has to be done?
What is working?
I think what is working is seeing chimpanzees really as they are, as a wild creature that can never be kept as a pet. And be wary of their habitat, so where they live is an environment that they can only live in. So they need it, and the environment needs to be protected. So for instance, for the orangutans, they're losing their habitats at a very, very fast pace. And when they don't have any trees to live in or to eat from, of course they die. They get extinct. So in that sense, I think the orangutans are suffering most, but chimpanzees for sure too in Africa, and the bonobos. And for gorillas, there's a few projects that actually work, like ecotourism, where people pay a lot of money to get a glimpse of them and have a beautiful experience, but all the money goes to protecting the gorillas, and that's somewhat successful. So I hope that for chimpanzees, this can also. I mean, there are beautiful efforts made in that direction, but for people out there, I think it's just good to realize that chimpanzees should be left alone in the wild, and not being seen as pets or bushmeat.
Edwin van Leuwen speaking to us there at Utrecht University. Now we're in the city.
All of this is possible because we can learn complex solutions to complex problems when other people show us how to do it. That's possible. That's what we can do. Chimpanzees can do it too.
In 6 million years, the chimps, we now know that they can do it. In 6 million years, they might have built this with the roads and the city planning and the architecture. They're on their way. Bumblebees, they're doing it.
Who knows
The Dutch can do it.
what other animals? If you have anything else to say on this topic, or anything related to chimpanzees, bumblebees, or anything else, leave a comment or send us an email. We're su@dw.com.